Hi Flosstube, it is Helen D. Today we're going to do a quick tutorial on how to make a pocket for a corner gauge. We are just back from the Stitch New England retreat, and in our goodie bag we had a wooden corner gauge as well as a kit of materials to make this little pocket. So I'm just going to show you how to put that together if you've never made one before. The stitch marker, the stitch gauge, is used to determine the border on a piece of stitching. If you want to have a 1-inch border, you line this up with the edge of your fabric so that then you go an inch in and an inch in, and you would start it in this hole, or a 2-inch or 3-inch, you would start right on the corner. So to start this, what I would do first, if you don't have this particular stitch marker, this is a basic tutorial, so it will work for anything, but I would make sure that your marker is exactly 3 inches long, because that's what these measurements will be for. If it's a little bigger or a little smaller, or if you have a 2-inch, you'll just need to adjust your measurements. So in the kit we had, this was our mock-up for when we were working things out. So we had fabric and the chart and the floss, and then you had a piece of backing fabric and 2 pieces of lining fabric. I have already cut these down to size. We're going to cut them to be 4 by 4. Now I'm going to turn this off when I cut, because I tried this once already and my brain wasn't functioning with my measuring. So I am going to do my measuring and cut my piece down to be 4 by 4 and be right back. Okay, I'm back. Usually I cut those on camera with you, but for some reason for this one my brain needed to really concentrate. So everything is now 4 by 4. I have 4 pieces of fabric. A front, a back, and 2 for the liner. So, done with this for now. If you have at home some interfacing, some lightweight interfacing, and you want to put it on the back of your stitches, you can. We're not stuffing this, and that's usually why I use interfacing on pillows, is because when I'm stuffing, I don't want to snag some of my stitches. So you can put interfacing. I am not going to. So what we're going to do to make the pocket is we're going to sew the front piece to a piece of lining and the back piece to a piece of lining. Then we're going to sew those together and turn it out. So I have my machine. I'm going to sew my front piece, and then there is a front and a back to my lining fabric. So I want my right sides together on my front piece and my lining. I'm going to sew those right across. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my front piece, my back piece, right sides together, and I'm going to sew this across. And I'm going to sew both of these using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I just did them together like that so I'd have to cut less. So I'll cut them apart. So we have our front to a lining and our back to a lining. Now I'm going to go over to my machine and just iron these down, and then I'll be right back. Okay, I gave these a quick iron just to flatten them out. I'm going to cut my strings off, and then I'm also going to come in. This was our 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to cut some of this bulk off just so that it's a little less bulky. It's easier to sew with a 1/4 inch seam than a close seam, but I really don't need all that. I'm going to do the same thing on this one. Let's make that a little tighter. Okay. So now we're going to line them up. We have our front and we have our back. And we want the front and the back to be on the same side and the liners to be on the same side. So we're going to then line them up like this and just flip them over so they're right sides together. So here's my front, here's my back. I'm going to flip them right over and line them up. And when I sew these, what I'm going to do first is I'm looking at this line right here. These things do not want to come apart. I'm trying to line this up so that I won't have any gap, right? So it will flow right from one to the other. And if it's not perfect, that's fine because we're going to iron it. So I'm just going to put a clip in there to kind of hold those together while I sew. So I have it lined up. I'm going to come up here on the liner side with my 1/4 inch. I'm going to leave a gap like you would when you were filling a pillow. So I'm going to come in and just do like a little bit of this edge and then all the way around and a little bit of this edge. You can fast forward this part if you like, but it's not going to take me that long, so I'm just going to leave the camera on. Doing a little back stitching on my edges just to kind of give them a little bit of reinforcement. Yep. There goes my bobbin. We've had this problem before on my machine. I'm going to pause you and fix that. Okay, sorry about that. My machine, even when I hold my stuff like I'm supposed to, sometimes just catches. So we'll try again. I can hear it when it does it too. Last little corner. Okay. Now we'll just trim it up, right? We'll take all our strings off. So now I'm going to come in, and I know this is a little hard for you to see, but I'm just going to cut this little corner off. We're trimming up some of the bulk again so that when we turn it, it takes up less space. So I'm going to come in here and trim these corners off on all 4. And then I'm going to do the same thing I did on the inside, where here's my 1/4 inch line. I'm going to thin that down. I'm going to thin it on the sides and the top, but not on the bottom where we left the empty hole. So the sides and the top. Okay. Now we turn it right side up. I did grab my point turner in case we need it. For half a minute there, I thought I put my stitching piece on upside down, but gratefully I did not. Okay, so I'm just poking those corners out. I'm being a little gentle because I didn't use the interfacing and I don't want to snag anything. Right? I'm going to pop back over to my iron this, just give it a good press down, and then here on the edge I'm going to turn that extra section in. The reason I do the corners is because then the rest of it naturally wants to follow, right? You can see it's already kind of going in on its own. So I'm going to fold this in, press it down, give it an iron, and be right back. All right, I pressed everything down. I have this edge. The last bit of sewing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come straight across this edge. And I'm going to try to hit it just over the edge. I don't want to do a 1/4 inch. I want to do just barely because this is our lining and we're going to tuck it in, and I don't want to eat up too much of that space. So I'm going to try and hit it just on the edge. You could hand sew it if that's easier. And I know that my white thread is going to show, but it's on the inside and I don't care. So we'll see what my machine likes with this. Sometimes it's a little finicky in that part. So you can see I did just the very edge. And I actually didn't quite go all the way to the edge because we had sewn that part anyway, so I don't have to worry quite so much. So now we just turn the lining on the inside and really pop the corners down in there. And you want this to be a little on the snug side because you don't want your corner gauge to fall out. So, and it will stretch out a little over time. All right, so I'm popping those corners down in as best I can. You can take this into your iron to really get the edges nice and sharp. Your iron probably isn't 3 rooms away like mine is. So I'm just going to put my corner gauge in it and iron it later. And if you wanted to, you could even do a stitch along the edge to kind of hold everything in place. So now you cross your fingers and you hope that this fits. And like I said, we want it to be a little on the snug side because it will stretch out. I've got one bump down there where my seam is. Get in there. I've seen some people do it with 4 1/8 for their measurements, but again, I want mine a little snug so that everything tucks in and I'm not going to, like, that's not going anywhere. It's not falling out. So there you have your Wicked Awesome Stitching corner gauge in its own little pocket, lined pocket, so that you can tuck it in with your stitching, and when you're ready to have a new start, you can get the proper corner that you need. I hope this made sense to everyone. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye.